Thank you. We may have time now for
Yes,
you.
having a look at what's online. It's earlier. Caroline Crawford writes, Dr. Ashford, an outstanding statement associated with orthodoxy within specialization areas. An impactful memory was a colleague presented our work on metaphorical representations and semiotics in distance learning environments at AERA way back in the early 2000s, when the big dogs in the field touted, quote, if we build it, they will come, quote, with which we didn't agree. I watched my colleague present and then the audience literally standing and yelling at her, merely because she thought differently from them. Their capability wasn't yet able to recognize what we were doing. It was a horror show that I shall never forget. Sounds like, Robert, your allusion to binary economic thinking. In the room, Eve?
Yes, well, it's to Francis. I have a comment and a question. So Francis, I don't know if you attended my talk yesterday, but I spoke about 4 new traits of the student population. And the 4th one is they are victims. And what I call victim, you call woke. So I totally agree with you that there's a strong connection between mobbing and wokeism. And I would say that wokeism gives rise to politically correct mobbing. So it's going to be a kind of mobbing that will be even more difficult to fight. You know, fighting mobbing is already difficult, but when it's politically correct mobbing, it's going to be even more difficult, okay? So that was my comment. So I totally agree with what you've said. Now, your anger, I could feel it. Could feel your anger, and it pleases me because I'm a quite aggressive person myself.
Yes.
So I really like that. And you said we have to confront those bastards, and I totally agree.
Please,
Now, my question is the following. How can we do that? Can you expand on your strategy, your confrontational strategy, especially in view of what Anne called this morning the breadwinner problem? How do you confront those bastards when you're out of work, you have no money?
I'm in the middle of it.
So that's my question. And thank you for your presentation. I loved it.
Thank you very much. Yes, and I love your work as well. I think it's excellent. And like, that's what it disturbs me a little bit. All the kind of touchy-feely kinds of approaches, which I don't think are suited to this situation. The problem is you have to be willing to lose it all. And that's what I've done. And I'm doing it now. Because me talking about this right now could result in me losing whatever the arbitrator is going to decide. But I've said, I've had it. I'm not going to put up with this anymore. The union has just been, I can't even get into it right now, what the union has done, which is complete treachery, absolute treachery. And you know, you're stuck there. So there's a couple things that I would, I don't have any children, so that perhaps is why I'm so much of a risk taker. So we need sort of more risk takers, I guess. So that's the first thing. Throw it all out to the public. I guess one of the most depressing things that I've found in the last 4 years, or the public didn't know about it until December 2021, is the public is very, very jaded now about universities. So we had the Lindsay Shepherd affair in Canada. I believe that was in 2017. And people cared. They were outraged what happened to Lindsay Shepherd. And then you look at what happened to me. And that's, I should mention this. I knew it was coming. Like a lot of people don't expect what's going to happen to them. And that's a disadvantage. I was completely prepared for what was going to happen because two people got pushed out of MRU before me. One I have talked about, which was the Mark Hecht case. And so what I started doing in 2019 is I recorded everything. I have recordings of everything, including all the investigation meetings. And I have currently a 6-hour investigation with Jeff Hope, who was the person who investigated the Renee Watchman complaint. And I am going to release that. And that is a huge shocker. But I released also the Provost Evans, my struggle session with Elizabeth Evans, the provost. That's on my SoundCloud. People can listen to it. It's about, I think, 40 minutes. It was pure 1984. It was, you must accept responsibility and show remorse. And I just dug in and said, I can't do that. And then because I didn't know what I was doing was wrong. There was no policy that told me anything. I've been dealing with this for several years. Anyway, it didn't matter in the end. So because the union said, she's hinting she's going to fire you. And I said, go ahead, fire me, and we'll take it the distance. But you have to have that kind of mentality. And we need more people who have that mentality. But unfortunately, with the people who have families, that they don't have the same kind of ability to act like people who don't have those responsibilities.
Other comments, questions? Ken?
I'd like to just highlight two things from Francis's presentation with many thanks for it. The one is you used the word treachery just now. And that reminded me of the one of the slides that Carolyn Crawford had with her presentation was from Dante's Inferno. The very worst part of hell is reserved for treachery. And I think what has come up regularly in our conference has been the sense of betrayal by unions.
Yes.
When the organization that is supposed to be protecting faculty betrays them instead, that's a particularly vile kind of treachery.
Yeah.
So that was the one thing I wanted to highlight from your presentation, Francis. And the second thing was I was really glad to hear you mention the earlier administrator at Mount Royal University, who, in the face of a complaint against you, and I take it was by a professor as opposed to a student, or
It was by a student politician.
by a student politician. So there, again, there's an example of the student
Yes.
attempting mobbing,
Absolutely.
and the administrator nipped it in the bud by simply copying
Yes.
the answer to the complaint
Francis, yeah.
to the person
Yeah.
who was being complained about. And you think, how many mobbings in academia or anywhere else could be prevented
Yeah.
just by that kind of action on the part of an administrator?
Yeah.
So I was really glad that you mentioned that, Francis. And I-
I'll take the liberty and you'll think about more questions and comments, but on the union point, I mean, cards on the table, I sued the union at my school in the last couple of years, so I'm not their favorite person. But, I think I was characterized in the media as being very anti-labor, understandable. I'm really not. I mean, what I am for is a union doing its job. And that is representing the people it's supposed to represent. And that's why I objected to it. And but I'll say, I've worked at about equal time in a union shop and a non-union shop. It just doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because the institution is the institution. And I think Peter, you said yesterday that it's they're in, they have the mutual interest of continued existence.
Right.
And that's what matters.
Francis was.
Francis, please.
Yeah, so this is something that I think is very important. The unions don't work in the academic environment, and I'm a socialist. I'm pro-union, completely pro-union. That's the way to increase, you're talking about auto workers, you're talking about working class people. In the public institutions, unions don't work because they pit the one part of the organization against the other and it's about wages. It's always about wages. And the most important principles are sold out in favor of wages. And in the corporatized setting, the union just becomes a corporatized element. What we need to do is go back to the older academic models of professors electing their administrators. And that's how you get the and the administrators are just professors like other people. They're highly qualified professors. When they finish their time as an administrator and they don't like it, they're doing it because it's their duty, they go back into the faculty and do their research and so on. That used to be the model of Oxford and Cambridge, I believe, and it isn't the model in some universities in Israel. That will work. The union situation will not, especially in today's climate where all the unions are woke and they just are taken over by woke activists who then participate in the mobbing of people who are critical of this kind of postmodern relativism and the identity politics stuff that is rampant, that is running rampant in the universities.
Emery.
Hi, Francis. I want to commend you. I have no doubt that you will make it through to the end and everybody will be held accountable. I have no doubt. I was you. And I went through 5 lawyers, and the first attorney said to me, nobody wins in a lawsuit. And I thought, yeah, right. What do you know? You're just a lawyer. And it took me 8 years, and all I wanted was my reputation back. And I wanted them to somehow take accountability for what they did.
Yeah.
The law is not, I did not get justice from the law. I went all the way through to the end, and I thought it would make me feel better. And this is just my own story. I wish I had listened. It would have helped me, just me, my single person. I went all the way through to the end. I got a settlement, nothing big. And all I found out was nothing. I did not feel better. The money was pittance. I wish they had kept their darn money. And I wished I had listened to the first attorney that said nobody wins. This was only my single personal story. And I recognized me in you. I was on a big white horse with a flag and I had the cavalry with me. And if I had it to do over again, I would do it different. So
I want Frances to respond to that, but I also just want to mention, if she'll permit me, it wasn't verbalized in an earlier session today, but when I think when Ken this morning was, so it was my fault for not verbalizing it. When Ken was critical of the timing on litigation, which I understand. I think it was Frances, you posted something about there are advantages in litigation. Sometimes it's not winning litigation. You talked about discovery a little bit, but in any event, you should please respond.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. People should not focus on the end, focus on, I think it's Mark Mercer, one of my favorite academics, who says, playing checkers, it's not about winning, it's about playing the game. This is what this is all about. So what you do is you just stick to your principles and fight it out. Fight it out as long as you can go on. I want to go to the Supreme Court with this. I don't know. It's not because I think it's going to be like the same. Supreme Court is woke. So how is that all going to work out? But what you do is you get disclosure. So I found out huge amounts of information from the legal disclosure. And then you get the legal reasoning, all the kind of problems with how the university has been conceptualized by what's called the professional managerial class. And that comes through in my case, which is just like, and I'm going to wait until whenever to talk about, I guess it's September, to talk about the decision, but the decision is absolutely horrible. It is completely horrible because of the reasoning of the managers and not the academics. They're not academics. They're looking at it as a corporation, and you are there as a cog in the wheel, and all this kind of finger wagging at you, blah blah, this kind of thing, which just infuriates me because, of course, I endured years of torment, which didn't really torment me because I didn't take these people seriously. I thought they were clowns, complete clowns. But when I responded in a much less, like in a completely justifiable way, using the words that they used, like, for example, epistemic terrorist. I used to use that word to refer to myself in a satirical way. That's when I was told that I was acting inappropriately. So I think that with the law, you can't look at it about what the decision is you're going to get, because you're not going to get a good decision. You use it as further examination, analysis, and for future generations. This is very important because it's possible that universities are lost. They're completely gone. We are documenting the decline of the universities for future generations, to show them where not to go with an academic institution. And it has to be looked at that way to stop oneself from getting demoralized, dispirited, defeated. That's very important. Is the fight is much greater than ourselves. And if we can keep an eye on the greater ideal, then it prevents people from sort of saying, oh, things are just terrible and so on. It's like, it's not about me. It's about the future and having human beings being able to pursue the truth and develop knowledge and help the rest of society. That makes it much easier to deal with.
Francis, every single thing that you're saying, I said. I was for the greater good. This was not going to happen to one other person, ever. Everything that you're saying went through the disclosure process. Nothing made me feel better. I was kind of the canary in the coal mine, and my small university now is imploding on itself. And people call me up to say, you must feel so vindicated because what happened to me was I said, not a bit. I would give anything to have my old job back with my students. But I was just this one person. But I'm telling you, everything, I'm an engineer. So everything is logical and step by step.
May I speak to that for a moment? Because I think it goes, first off, I think Francis, it's remarkable that Professor Reyes and Crawford both asked the question about energy. And as Francis always had it, I'm just going to go ahead and say yes. But how she maintains it, I think she spoke to it a bit. Reyes also asked me about law schools and the role of training lawyers. And to your point, I want to say something that I say to first year tort students, a former one who's gracious enough to be in the room with us. So she'll forgive me for repeating it. But no, see, this is important, and it's, look, I teach torts, right? Civil litigation. Like to first years, it's just ambulance chasing, personal injury. Here's the reality of the tort law in America. Plaintiffs usually lose. They usually lose 90% of the time. It's not because they don't have meritorious cases, right? It's for all kinds of systemic reasons, and a lot of them aren't fair and whatever. But the problem that creates is that client counseling is complicated. You can't simply say, oh, you have a meritorious cause, therefore we will sue, right? But in that client counseling, what I can tell you about litigation of all kinds, whether it's a car accident or a defamation or a mobbing, it's different things to different people. And so you have to, and you acknowledge that when you say me, right? That's it, and that's why the client counseling is complicated, because the job of the lawyer then has to be to put in front of the client the potential wins, potential losses, the odds, what you're going to get, what you never get, and make sure the client understands that. And then some people are going to say yes, some are going to say no. And I'd say, on the one hand, it's absolutely okay to say no. And that might be the right answer for a lot of people, but boy, it has to be, as Francis points out, somebody's got to say yes. And that moves the ball forward. Kim?
I just wanted to say, I'm in the midst of actually 3 fights. My own school, there's a COVID litigation that I'm a part of because of my husband's death and my son's death. And in each case, these are huge injustices, two of which are taking a lot of my time. 2 things. One, I hear from all of you, the process is part of the punishment, which is something that has resonated with me for a while. And something that disillusioned me in the start of all this. Another thing though is I think that each of us have to carry it as far as we have the strength to carry it. And we don't bring any judgment against somebody who gets to the end of what they can carry. And from my faith, like my feeling is somehow this is part of my role in my time is to carry what I can carry for such a time as this. And at some point, God's gonna tell me, okay, that's enough, Kim. You've done your piece. And it might be a big piece, it might be a tiny piece, but again, as Francis said, for the future, and you said as well, you don't know what those pieces are that we can, but we can't hold anybody else accountable for the decision they make to take care of themselves at what point.
Any final comment from Francis or Robert before?
Yeah, I think it's wrong to think about it as the process is the punishment. You've got to embrace it. That's the way you're going to survive. If you're sort of saying, I'm going to go until I'm defeated or to whatever, that's going to be bad. I know a professor, a great guy. I love him. He was pushed out before me. He's just totally destroyed. His whole, he's just like inward and he can't. And I keep on saying to him, the only way you're going to be able to recover this is to fight now. But it's just too defeated. So people go through terrible, horrible incidents, genocides, everything, but they are in control of their own minds. And you have to try to figure out a way to do it. It's not been easy for me. I've had terrible personal cost, but I'm just starting to come out the other side. And I'm just saying, damn it, I am not going to be defeated by this. And people, and I know it's hard. It's like talking to people who maybe don't have the same mindset, but that's really the key to not living the rest of your life thinking, I wish I had done something differently. Fight it out and don't expect a positive result. Document what's happened for everyone else. Form organizations and alliances with other people who can help you. And perhaps that's something that's really helped me is that I've had absolutely wonderful colleagues who might not be out there, but they've supported me, they've helped me, they've read things that I've written, they've given advice. That's very, very important. So you need to develop, and I'm here for anyone. I have a podcast, The Rational Space Disputations. Anyone can be on it. Let's talk about what happened to you and to figure out some ways to hold those to account. Hold the people to account who destroyed lives and ruined our academic institutions. You will be held to account. Say that. That's going to be the rest of my life. I'm going to be holding the people who ruined Mount Royal University to account.
I have to call it here. We are into break time. Thank you very much, panelists.